Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with author and historian Charles Coulombe.
No superlatives, no King of the Larpers, Lord of the Elves, no...
Well, no. Well, one person did call you something. He very recently on our video on fascism, Jimius Papaloev, or something like that. He wrote... Okay. He wrote, "You are a bunch of giggling cucks.
Huh.
There is nothing right-wing about you."
Okay. What's a cuck?
It's funny you should ask. I looked it up. Well, apparently it's a strange youth colloquialism.
Colloquialism.
So I had to go...
It's not a sort of a softening of a dirty word, is it?
No. That's what I originally thought.
All right, well, what's cuck?
UrbanDictionary.com defines cuck as a man who is desperate for acceptance, approval, and affection from women. This desperation has led to the compromise of his beliefs and values, the desecration of his dignity and self-worth,
Wow.
and his inability to stand up for himself and what he deserves as a human being.
Ooh.
That's what we are.
But we're
the giggling version
cucks.
of that.
Gosh, so but that also means he doesn't get dates. Would be my thinking.
Fascists don't get a lot of dates?
Well, I don't know about fascists
Wow.
in general, but him in particular.
Oh, well, definitely, yeah.
No, I don't think he'd get many dates.
No.
Well, that's all right. I can understand. Giggling cucks. Well, gee willikers, that sounds just great. Try it. You might enjoy having a date now and then. I don't know. It's been a long time since I was in the market. Things may have changed. But well, it could be. I don't know.
The Tangier slave market?
The Tangier slave market. No, I gave even that up. You know? I ran out of dough. No, giggling cucks. Well, okay, and there's nothing right-wing about you at all? Okay, you know, right-wing is one of those big words that people today often don't understand. Just so you know, it comes from the French Revolution and where people were seated in the French Revolutionary Parliament. You're right, actually. You're right. I can't speak for Vinny, but I myself am not committed to being right-wing or left-wing. I'm not committed to being conservative or liberal or any other political label of that sort. I am interested in trying to follow what's true. Now, if that leads other people to call me right-wing or left-wing or a crypto hippie.
Ah, I love that.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Or a cuck. Or any other word you like. That's nice. That's good. If that makes you feel better about yourself and your choices, presuming you've made any. But for myself, it's not about labels, it's about realities. And I would offer this little thought to our friend. If we giggle, it's because we enjoy ourselves. I'm sorry if you don't. But then again, not having a date would do it for some guys your age.
Yeah.
I can see that. All right. Well, maybe gender reassignment. I don't know. Who knows?
You know, we laugh because there's so much absurdity in the world that there's two options, at least from my point of view. You get triggered and you get angry and restless, or you can laugh about it.
Or you can laugh about it. And that...
And as Soul and Church says, laughter is a gift from God to cope with our fallen nature.
No. And on the opposite, anger and wrath are gifts from Satan to take you to hell.
Yeah.
But of course, now hold on though. He was triggered over the fascist thing. And there is definitely a vein of non-religious or anti-religious fascism. So if he's part of that, then by his own rights, he'd be fine. By his own point of view. So there's nothing to complain about, actually. All is one in the Tao, as our Chinese friends say.
I've never heard that one before.
Never heard that?
One in the Tao?
Yeah, the Tao is in the way, the method, the path that covers all life, all existence. It's like the Force of Star Wars, only not.
Oh.
It's all one in the Dow. And of course, the more financially minded say it's all one in the Dow Jones.
Of course.
No. All right. Let's move along.
Okay, yeah, once again, Charles's new book, A Catholic Quest for the Holy Grail, is now available on Tumbler House website.
It is, and I recommend it highly.
That and all the rest of his books, bought through TumblerHouse.com, will be signed.
They will. They will. They will. They will. Also, I would remind you, in this aftermath of Thanksgiving, if you've got any turkey left, enjoy it. Even though it's from the Puritans.
Anything else before we get started today?
Well, you know, I don't know. It's a strange old world, that's all. In November, you know, it's the month of the Holy Souls. I'm thinking of my dear departed, of whom, as you get older, and for those of you who are younger out there, trust me, you don't know this yet, but you will. There comes a time when the majority of people you like are dead. And that's annoying. I'm not quite there yet, but I can see.
Yeah.
I mean, the dead are a heavy minority, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe a good third and growing of the people whom I'm really fond of. And that's important to remember because you're not going to be here a long time. And yet, what you do here determines your eternity. So make it count. Make the whole thing count. And that's my thought for the day.
That's Deep Thoughts by Charles Coulombe.
Wow. Every day in every way we're getting better and better.
What is that? Is that Scientology?
No, that's self-affirmation.
Oh.
Positive thinking. You know what the key to positive thinking is?
Self-delusion.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay, let's get started.
All right. What do we got? What do we got?
Jules Samuels writes in asking, my question is regarding the Sibylline Oracles.
Oh, as one does.
As one does?
Yes.
Okay, do you think they are genuine or simply a later Christian edit on the pagan texts? Could the Sibyl have been given prophecy? I know the church fathers, Saint Athenagoras in particular, did, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts, such as they are that they are, yes, they are authentic. And just so you know what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the Sibylline Oracle was a Sibyl, also she's called, was not unlike the Oraclette at Delphi. It was a lady who told the future. And people from all over the Roman Empire before the time of Christ would go to her to get prophecies. Of course, the prophecies were not always clear. But nevertheless, several books of them were written down. And in one of these, she appears to refer to the coming of our Lord. So that's what that refers to. This, by the way, is immortalized in the Dies Irae, which you may have heard
right.
at funerals, at requiems, which starts out in English. Day of wrath, O day of mourning, see fulfilled the prophet's warning. David and Sibyl both agreeing. And yes, the church fathers believed that they were genuine, and so do I, because the church fathers were closer in time to that era than either I am or unbelieving academics in ivory towers. So I'll go with the church fathers over Professor Peabody of Harvard Divinity School any day.
Yeah, you made one very poignant remark before the show on this, which was that, about Caiaphas.
Oh, yeah, well, that's very true. I mean, the question is, can prophecy go through impure sources?
Yeah.
The Sibyl being pagan. And, of course, our Lord said, Caiaphas, rather, whose job as high priest was to prophesy, amongst other things, said, one man must die for the whole nation. And his prophecy, we are told, was true. So, a prophet can be non-Catholic, can be unholy, as in not a good person, and yet still be used as a venue of truth by the Almighty. context is everything. I mean, that's likely to happen to the Sibyl, about whom, on whose every word people hung, than it is to Reverend Ike.
Yeah.
In other words, the more influence the individual has, the more likely God is likely to use them. And then, of course, at the end of the day, how do you tell whether or not it was a genuine prophecy? Well, as with all of our Catholic prophecies, at the end of the day, does it come true?
Right.
If it doesn't come true, then it was phony. If it does, then it wasn't.
Good advice.
That's the problem with prophecy. I mean, you don't really know until they're accomplished.
Yeah.
Their full meaning.
Yeah.
Because very often, I'll give you an example, one of my personal favorites. Blessed Catherine Emmerich, who had these visions of the future.
Yeah.
In which she saw families gathered around black boxes out of which the devil spoke. Now, you look at that seems odd. Well, wait a minute. Let's pretend for a second, because she had visions, bear in mind, and these visions had absolutely no soundtrack or explanation. What do you think she would? She gets a vision of a 21st century family sitting around watching Game of Thrones at its steamiest. What do you think she would think? What would she say about that? And of course, there's a sense in which she'd be right. It's not the devil directly speaking, but it certainly is a rather evil pandering to our worst impulses. For all that Game of Thrones is a very compelling storyline.
My favorite prophecy of hers, apparently, was where she predicted that in the 1960s, God would let loose great legions of demons from hell. And when did she live? Like the 1600s?
No, 1820s.
Oh, 1820s.
Late 1700s, early 1800s.
But boy, did she pick the right decade.
I'll say.
Jackpot.
I'll say, and some of them went to San Francisco and wore flowers in their hair. What?
Yeah, they did.
All right, what else we got?
Next question is from Nate. I want to be a screenwriter when I'm done with college, so how can I bring Catholic principles back in the movie industry? And do you think the recent rape scandals in Hollywood indicate that this is the end of the film industry in its current incarnation? Is this the beginning of the end of Hollywood? Is this it?
The end is near. Hooray for Hollywood! Where you're fantastic if you're even good. I've gotten so much hope out of that line. Where you're fantastic if you're even good.
Yeah.
I'm reminded, my father was an actor, and I'm reminded of this would-be actress that spoke somewhere. There was a contest or something, and she won. And she said, I want to go to Hollywood and become a movie star so I can learn how to act. My dad never forgot that. He'd have us rolling on the floor with that one. But anyway, to answer your question,
which one are you going to answer? Is this the end of Hollywood?
No, we'll start with the screenwriter question.
Okay.
He wants to be a screenwriter. Well, that's beautiful. There's an old joke, and this is a little lewd. I don't know if it'll survive the censors on the top floor. But the line is, did you hear about the Polish starlet?
No.
She slept with the writer. The idea being that the least empowered person in Hollywood are the writers. That's not always true, but it's true a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So if you become successful as a screenwriter, and believe me, I wish you every success. Don't let my teasing, tell you anything else. If that's what you're aiming for, don't expect you're going to get that much room to do much of anything. But let me give you some advice. I will anyway. If you want to be a writer, young'un, make sure first and foremost that you've read a lot. Okay? And by reading, I mean these outdated things, books. You know the things they call the classics? Dickens, Sir Walter Scott, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Washington Irving, Longfellow, and poems as well, you see. Longfellow. Everything that we call the classics, Shakespeare, Molière, Chaucer. Read them. Read them, read them, read them. Read a lot of plays, good plays. That's why Samuel French was brought into the world, so you could have an endless supply of plays to read. The first filmmakers who, not in terms of their technology, but in terms of the emotions they were able to put on screen, the things they were able to do, they were literary men. The problem with so many of our movie makers today is that they are not. They are strictly self-referential within the boundaries of cinema alone. Now, mind you, don't get me wrong. What cinema can do today through technological miracles is wonderful. But oh, to be able to marry that to the understanding of the human condition via literature, etc., that the early filmmakers had, to bring those two together, oh, what could be done, you know? What could be made? Now notice I haven't even touched upon the religious aspect yet. There's a reason for this. You want to be extremely good at doing what you do, at screenwriting, or if you're, because I presume other people are thinking of cinematography or whatever, or film direction, film production, or maybe listening. You need to be ultra good at what you do before you can even think about influencing those around you, because they will not listen to losers. They will not listen to people who are not accomplished at what they do. Look at John Ford. He was a great Catholic filmmaker. He sometimes was a filmmaker first and a Catholic second, but he was a brilliant man, and he brought the insights that the faith gave him to human nature to the film. Imagine if John Ford were alive now and able to make films with what we have today. That would be astonishing. So my suggestion then is that, you know, get yourself down to the basics. Know your grammar, for heaven's sake. You know, I hate to be critical, because I'm a nice person in a sense, sort of, kind of, in a way. But heavens to Betsy, ladies and gentlemen, the educational system that you young folks have come out of is sheer garbage, so much of it. And you can tell when you read things that people write. They're not grammatical. They don't know how to write. So get those basics down. Now let's presume you've done all that. Then you come to Hollywood. I'm sorry, I was just lost in contemplation of how wonderful it all is. As a cousin of mine calls it, Hollywood, the city that never lets you forget where you are. Not for one little moment. Let's presume. All right, what is the future of the industry? Well, I don't know. I don't have my tarot cards today. But does this... I think there are two things happening. One, I think that the internet and all that is really changing the nature of things, simply because, A, you guys can do a lot of stuff on your own that you need a studio to do.
Right.
So I don't know what direction that's going to go in. But we're seeing already the almost complete subsuming of television by the internet. I mean, people watch computers now. They don't look at their televisions. You know, if you are, you're likely going to be watching old channels like MeTV or whatever for whatever reruns you're incapable of finding on the internet. And you can find most reruns on the internet.
Yeah. So
probably, possibly, maybe, movies will go through, you know, the big screen will be subsumed the same way. I don't know. Whether or not this particular scandal, these scandals in Hollywood today are not a sign of Hollywood's strength. Because in the good old days, they just didn't come out. You know, everyone, they were hushed up. Everyone knew where the bread was buttered. Does this signal the beginning of some great decline or whatever? I don't know. But it certainly is interesting. And another interesting thing that has not as yet come out. Corey Feldman finally filed charges in terms of his and Corey Haim's seduction. Now this you may not have heard of, but this was a big deal when Corey Haim died a couple years ago. And at the time, Feldman, who had introduced this fellow to their mutual seducer, would not reveal who he was because he said he's still a power in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's filed charges with the LAPD.
Against who?
I don't know. We're going to see where the shoe drops. Kevin Spacey, who, some people were grateful to hear that he was human, let alone anything else. But Kevin Spacey, this Taylor Grasham, the agent, Harvey Weinstein, will more heads roll, or is this it? I don't know. Stay tuned. I will say, though, that one person, one lone voice has stood up for Harvey Weinstein.
Bill Cosby.
Well, somebody had to. Someone had to take a stand. All right, great. What else we got?
One other thing. From what I see in movies compared to what I see on television shows, from my perspective, it seems like all of the talented writing is gravitating toward television shows now. Would you say that's true?
That is, and I think part of the reason for that is that you have a greater freedom.
Absolutely, and you have so much more time to develop characters and do interesting things.
I mean, let's face it, I see it now with people like Netflix overcoming even the time constraints that a show like, say, The Walking Dead still has.
Yeah.
I mean, Netflix are able to dump the whole thing on you. 12 hours of an extraordinary show.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there in a little bit of drool at the corner of your mouth, like a junkie, watching this. That's an extraordinary deal.
I actually don't like that when I haven't enjoyed, like, when something's quote-unquote dumped on you like that. I like the weekly spacing because then you sort of get to savor it.
That's because you're old.
Because I'm old?
Yeah.
What does my age have anything to do with that?
Well, because you're formed in the period you were formed in. You were formed in the pre-Netflix era.
Netflix is going to get its own era now? We're living in the age of Netflix?
The age of Netflix. You've arrived. And see, these kids are all about immediate gratification. They want the whole thing down. They don't have to wait for it.
I mean, it's like eating a feast in like 1 second, or letting it savor.
How do you think I got these kids? Exactly. No, but you're right. It is true that having the week between gives you the chance to savor and to think about what's going on.
And if a show's really good and it does that, on the finale, and it leaves you with a cliffhanger. Yeah. Sometimes, like, how am I supposed to really go a year? Really? Am I supposed to go a year? Rather than, certain shows I've watched, one season after another because I came at it late. I love the year-long thing and the build-up during that year.
Well, the build-up, and also, something I've missed a lot. Although there's still, every now and then, bits and pieces of it. But I do miss the seasonal program. In other words, your regular series would always have either or both a Halloween and a Christmas show. Right. And, sometimes they were stupid, and sometimes they were not. Yeah. But I had this recently interesting experience, to me anyway. The BBC, every year, because it's a big British custom to tell ghost stories at Christmas time, hence the line of the song, "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago." Anyway, never mind. The point is, they do this, and every year the BBC produces a ghost story, usually taken from the writings of M.R. James. And this is in keeping with that particular tradition. Well, they dumped all these things, like 50 years worth, on YouTube. So I've been just watching. Yeah. And several of them have Christopher Lee playing M.R. James himself, telling the story to a college audience, at the turn of the century Cambridge. Nice. Yeah, it is very pleasant, very, very pleasant indeed. But in the course of looking at these things, I came across a very peculiar program, which was basically a Scots soap opera called The High Road, which I never saw before, knew nothing about, never heard of. It ran, I think, from like 1982 to 2004, or something like that. And this was set in 2001, 2000, the millennium.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it was their New Year's Eve special, but it was 2 hours. Now, this is a regular soap opera. It's Scottish, like Coronation Street is English, but this is soap opera. You know, soap operas are what they are. There's nothing...
Yeah.
And you rarely have the supernatural intervene.
Right. But I guess...
Oh, man, this thing was so over the top. It was great. And mind you, the pacing was such, because obviously, whoever was watching this thing immediately knew the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
Yeah.
So it was all very peculiar. They
Yeah.
all had backstories I didn't know anything about. It was a weird thing, but it's all immortalized on YouTube now, so you can see it.
Excellent.
Yeah, it also brought me back a good 17 years to that special New Year's Eve, 99, 2000.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Leonardo. What are the church's views on interracial marriage?
They say it's all cucks. No.
Oh, no.
No. Actually, I'm going to say something very strange. You ready?
Is that unusual?
No,
I'm ready. I'm ready.
now that you say it, it's not at all unusual, to tell you the truth. No, the church has no views on interracial marriage.
Wow.
They have views on mixed marriage, which is when a Catholic marries someone who belongs to one of the false religions, of which there are many to choose from. And then there are certain rules. If the church will grant you a dispensation to marry a non-Catholic, if said spouse promises to raise the Catholics as children, the children as Catholics. And, moreover, you'll live a good Catholic life. No contraception. You'll take the number of kids you get. You'll not commit adultery. You'll try to teach your children, have a decent home life.
Yeah.
That is what the church demands out of all of any and all married people. Now, there's nothing at all about race there. Historically, if you look at wherever the church has gone outside of Europe, Latin America, India, parts of Asia, parts of Africa, you'll see that wherever there were Catholic colonial powers, there was soon a lot of mixed-race marriages.
Yeah, because they're converting people, and
They sure are.
they're marrying the natives.
Yep. And that was a big part of the evangelization of those parts of the world. So that has been the view of the church, and therefore it is mine.
There you go.
Okay. Now, mind you, you do have to have a little bit of what's the word I want? Prudence.
Oh, how?
Well, this is the other half of it. The other half is simply that the more you have in common with your spouse, the easier it is to be married. I'll give you a concrete example of what I mean. A friend of mine decided he was going to marry a Latina girl. And she was very pretty and very bright, and had sort of anglicized herself. You know, she'd gone to the University of San Francisco. She was a docent with the LA, the preservation people. I can't think of what they're called, but she toured people around historic homes, that kind of thing. She had basically remade herself into kind of an Anglo. But she hadn't always been that way. The first time we had dinner, I noticed she had the very tiny gang tats on her knuckles. So I looked at her and I said, "Vata!" And she just started laughing. You know, her poor fiancé was looking at us wondering what we were talking about. But life is that way, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, I mention this because after they got married, he complained to me that he was extremely unhappy. Now, he was a convert from Anglicanism. All right, so there's one particular kind of culture.
Yeah.
And he says, she treats me with no respect, she's nasty, she's abusive, she's this, she's that. He's going, on. And I said, the problem here, I think, is that the two of you have very different cultural expectations of each other. You want a wife you can sit down with, get her views on, consult with, and as it were, be an equal partner and all this sort of thing, intellectual soulmates. But what she is used to is something quite different. She's used to a man who decides what's going to be done, lays down the law, and then she'll manipulate him out of it and do what she wants. And he looked at me, and he said, well, that's that whole macho thing. She's rejected all that. I said, she's rejected it consciously. But culturally speaking, that's what's in the back of her mind, and she will be unhappy with you unless you are a bit more mannish about it. But I'm not like that. I don't like throwing my weight. I said, I know. But it depends on you on how happy a marriage you want. Don't ask me. So he's one of those few friends of mine who actually took my advice. And all these years later, they're still very happy together.
Excellent.
Well, she knows how to work him, and he knows how to work her. So I don't like giving out marital advice over the street like this. But the point I'm making is that you have to bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, not just a question of race, but also culture. Your expectations upon going into a marriage may be very different from that of your spouse. And because you're in love, you don't think of it. I just
read an article literally on that the biggest problem with marriages and reason for divorce is unmet expectations.
No. And you can't, you know, when you don't even know what your expectations are, you just have them, you know, burbling around in your head. You're putting them on your spouse is putting them on you. And they have no more looked at theirs than you have at yours. You're both very frustrated, you don't know why. And a lot of those expectations are culturally based, racially based, ethnically based, whatever you like. So I mention this because if you're going to marry someone from a very different background than your own, and that basically means anyone who isn't a cousin, explore their family carefully, explore their dynamics carefully, and sit down, for heaven's sake, and talk about it with your would-be wife or husband. Because these things are going to play a part. You may not think so, but they will. Similarly, you know, the advice my father always gave me was that if you're interested in marrying a girl, be sure to meet the mother, because that'll be your wife in 30 years. It's not always true, but it's true a lot.
Okay, Patty Fournier, he says, Bonjour, mes mecs.
Ah, bonjour, comment ça va, tu?
Since it's the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, I heard a sermon on the brutality of Queen Mary I of England and her suppression of heretical bishops and lay people. The talk was given by a Presbyterian pastor.
I'll bet.
And he mentioned how many Protestants were martyred for their faith. He also stated that the Reformation brought people back to the faith of the apostles. Doesn't the Church condemn such persecutions as carried out by Bloody Mary?
Wow. Okay, well, for starters, where does one begin? As your brother would say, if you accept my premises, my conclusions are easy. Unfortunately, I don't accept his premises.
What are the premises?
The premise that the Reformation restored the apostolic faith. It did no such thing. It created a new and bizarre and peculiar one. It invented a new Christ for itself, which to this day it idolizes. The thing you have to understand is that the Reformation was a revolution, just like the Russian and the French. In bringing it about, in making Protestants, in ripping England and Scandinavia and northern Germany and other places away from the faith, hundreds and thousands of people were killed. The pilgrimage of grace in the north of England, the risings in the north and west of England, in Sweden, all over the country, or all over northern Europe, peasants rose to defend their ancient religion and were slaughtered in droves. Henry VIII himself, the father of Queen Mary, murdered any number of Catholics, including St. Thomas More. Queen Mary, when she came to the throne, before she came to the throne, they attempted to replace her with a usurper lady called Lady Jane Grey. This failed.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the people who were invested in keeping England Protestant supported her. That's called treason. what happens to treason, or to the people who perform it in this country today?
They get killed.
Yeah, they do. Very, very nice. So awful. I don't shed a tear for the people that Queen Mary dealt with, because she had been on the receiving end. And these were the people who had broken the apple cart, not the other way around. You know, if I come up and I punch you, okay?
Okay.
And then you punch me back harder, and I go flying. Okay, I went flying, but I punched you in the first place. And you got to remember that, as St. Augustine tells us, or asks us, who is worse, the murderer who kills the body or the heretic who kills the soul? I would recommend, for a proper discussion of this, rather than going on this way, I would recommend that you read a book called Characters of the Inquisition by William Thomas Walsh.
That's a big book. That's a very famous book.
It's a very famous book. It's an important book. The other thing you've got to bear in mind, too, was that in those days, religious belief was, of course, bound up with loyalty to the state. Just as today, belief in gender fluidity is bound up with loyalty to the state. And if you don't, you're a bigot and a hater. And if you say, certain words, you'll be destroyed professionally. Well, every society has an orthodoxy, and if you deviate from that orthodoxy, you will be punished. It's the nature of it. Why? Because every society wants to protect itself. Now, the difference between one society and another is that one society is based on truth, and another is based upon lies. But if you're willing to speak the truth in a society based upon lies, you will be treated poorly, and you just have to accept that.
Let's go on a little tangent, because you talked a little bit about Reformation. There's a war when it comes to language. Liberals, they use political correctness.
Yeah.
I believe reading Puritan's Empire, I don't think you ever called the Protestant Reformation the Reformation.
No,
it's the Protestant Revolt.
Protestant Revolt, which is what it was.
It is a revolt. They didn't reform anything.
No.
And so I salute all you people out there who call it Protestant Revolt, because that's what it was.
And see, there's another thing, too, for that Presbyterian minister. How can he speak of the apostolic faith when no two Protestant sects agree on basic doctrines? You see, the only thing they agreed on was that everyone had the right to decide for himself what was true in terms of religion, unless they disagreed with the other person, in which case they could be beaten to a pulp. That's why the Protestants put to death not just Catholics, although they killed a lot of us, but also other Protestants. Even in our own country, the Congregationalists in Massachusetts, the Pilgrim Fathers we were just celebrating at Thanksgiving, they put to death Baptists and Quakers, not just witches.
Wow.
Yeah, see, that's a little bit of our history we don't know.
Yeah.
So, and as far as the Presbyterians go, don't get me started on what the Scots Presbyterians did to Catholics. Starting with their rightful queen, Mary, Queen of Scots. Don't get me started on the Covenanters. Don't do that.
Okay, Patty has a follow-up question. How is St. Thomas More canonized, as he had 6 people burned at the stake for heresy?
In the immortal words of the old rabbi, but did they deserve it?
You just sort of touched upon it.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing, the heretic or
the murderer?
Yeah.
And how many murderers did he send to the stake?
Yeah.
So yes, he definitely deserved it. I mean, canonization. I don't know about them. I wasn't there.
Okay. Chaser asks, is boxing sinful? When is violence justified other than self-defense or war? Is boxing okay because it's two consenting adults where the main objective is to beat a man until he can't fight anymore?
That's a very good question, and I have no answer for you. I don't know if the church has any teaching on it, and I personally have absolutely no views regarding it myself, for or against. A good friend of mine was a boxer in college when we were at college together. But I'm afraid I can't help you. I don't really have an opinion. I've not studied the matter, and I haven't thought about it. So, sorry.
Okay. Next question is from Benjamin Cruz. Are Aryanism and Islam directly related?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Really good. Well, I don't know. I can see where they might be. Certainly historically you've got the right time period, because you've got Aryanism coming around in the 300s. Islam arises 300 years later. We know there were Aryans all over the place, even after its official condemnation. And certainly if you stop and think about what Islam is, Christ is a prophet, but he's a prophet born of a virgin, who herself was immaculately conceived, which sounds a lot like some of the Aryan sects. It's just that they kind of jimmy Muhammad in there.
Yeah.
You know, like he was an afterthought almost by himself. I guess Islam, when Unitarianism goes really wrong.
Whoa.
Gosh. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, as a giggling cuck, these things happen. But what? You okay?
No, I'm glad you embraced your cuck nature.
I am. I submit to whatever. I don't know who I'm submitting to, but sure. Anyway, so just cucking right along here. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when you consider how many times I've been told that I've got too big a mouth, I'm too forceful, I push my opinions too hard, it's refreshing to be called a cuck. I like that. It makes you seem sort of nice, you know. I like that a lot. Thank you very much, in retrospect. Anyway, so, where was we?
Aryanism and Islam.
Oh, yeah. I'd say there's a really good case to be made. I don't know if it's absolutely true, but it could very well be. So, and I mean, certainly, Belloc argues, I think, very forcefully and well, that Islam is actually a Christian heresy that kind of what's, you know, beyond and beyond.
Interesting. So he thinks Muslims worship the same God as Christians.
Well, not exactly.
Oh.
Because, you know, a heresy can be wrong about the nature of God. Remember,
right.
The Christian God, the Catholic God, is a triune being who became incarnate in his second person as Jesus Christ, who himself continues to transubstantiate out of the altars of the world every day and to reach us through the sacraments. All right. That's a somewhat different Christ from the Protestants who don't believe in sacraments in the way that we do. And it's a very different God from the Muslims and the Jews who believe that God is unitary.
Mm.
I mean, and yet you could make the claim that all three claim to be heirs of the covenant with Abraham. So that's an historical connection that does exist.
Yeah.
But I think that to simply blanket say all three Abrahamic faiths worship the same God is a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
And just as I would say that the Catholic Christ is rather different from the Protestant Christ, although pretty much identical to the Orthodox Christ.
Yeah. Okay. Benjamin Cruz with another question. How big of an effect do you think the growing number of African Catholics have on the reestablishing of tradition?
No, they certainly got a good chunk. I mean, some of their priests are quite good. Of course, we've got people like Cardinal Arinze and now Cardinal Sarah, who's a very, very brave individual. So, yeah, I'm sure that they could, especially because their numbers are growing and ours aren't. So, mind you, the Church in Africa has problems of its own, polygamy, A lot of sexual difficulties down there.
You know what, this question reminds me of a great question we had in the past on Swedish Catholicism, the Swedish saints.
Yeah.
And you talked about their contribution to the faith, and that what the Swedish brought, like St. Bridget, and they brought a warlike approach.
Yeah.
They're very militant. So in that sense, what do you think would be the contributions from African Catholics?
The biggest contribution, I think, is their basic worldview, the idea that the faith is true. Now, when I say that, it seems like a truism, ha ha ha, but it's not, because remember, most of us Westerners actually go about putting the faith into a box for Sunday.
Right.
We don't act as though our guardian angel is always with us, our Lord and our Lady are always looking down on us. They hear prayer the way you're hearing me talk right now. You know, the sense that the supernatural is very much a part of everything we're doing, everything around us, and that we're in it.
Yeah.
You know, we're not in some safe place outside of it, which is what we Westerners tend to think. But the Africans are certainly aware that in that area our view is completely untrue, and we're wrong, and they are right. That's why they have, I mean, there have been a lot of interesting devotions that have come out of Africa. The Via Matris, the Way of the Mother, and things like that. Because they do have a very high understanding, a very high instinct for the supernatural. And they also, because of that, have an appreciation for ceremony that we lack.
Yeah.
Because of our poor grasp of spiritual reality. So that's something I think they can bring to us.
Okay. Our final question again is from Benjamin Cruz, and he asks,
You're just really, Mr. Cruz, you're just really taking up our time today. Fine, I don't care. What is it? I don't care. I'll tell him.
how traditional, oh, this is the final question for today.
Oh boy.
How traditional do you see the church in the future?
Well, of course, we have to determine what we mean by traditional. If we mean the church that I knew as a child, somewhat, a little bit, maybe. But if we mean a church, unlike the church that I've known most of my life, that is in complete and constant touch with its tradition, not just with the 50s, not just with the Middle Ages, not just with the Baroque era, not just with the Western Rite or just with the Eastern Rites, but with all of it. Intimately connected. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. Liturgies that reflect and express the Church's teachings as opposed to concealing them or trivializing them. Yeah, definitely. There'll be some painful stuff to go through before then, not least of which will be the dying off of the current generation of church leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And what will follow in its wake will be a very unpleasant scrub, I think. But in the immortal words of Dr. Van Helsing, that great theologian, you remember Dr. Van Helsing?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. That great theologian.
Yeah, the great theologian.
Yeah. We must pass through dark waters before we reach the sweet. And that I think is true. Things in the immediate will get a bit worse, especially as the elderly and senile in charge wreck as much as they can on their way out. I'm going to break it all up, everything! Then they will have younger supporters. But they will not win, and they will not last. Because they can't build, they can't produce. Their mindset has given us the empty convents and the empty parishes and the empty schools that even now they insist are signs of success. How senile do you have to be? You know? But to all of them, in whatever capacity they may be, prelate, priest, involved layperson, religious sister, religious brother, I have one special message for you from the time when you were alive. The times, they are changing. Depend on it.
But why are they changing?
They're changing because more and more young people are discovering the truths and traditions of the faith as the only reason for staying Catholic. You see, Benedict XVI says, our current teaching of universalism and all that not only removes any reason for evangelization,
Mm-hmm.
it removes any reason for staying Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And not simply because he said it, but in a natural, instinctive way, those young people who are keeping the faith, for the most part, are saying, yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. There's so many of us that want a return to tradition. Several of my friends, what they want is an abolishment of the Novus Ordo. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say Ratsa Ruck.
Ratsa Ruck?
Yes.
Scooby-Doo, lots of luck?
Ratsa Ruck.
Oh, okay.
It's a Japanese phrase.
Uh-huh. But is that something to pray for?
I wouldn't pray for it. What I would pray for is the Novus Ordo's transformation into the mirror image of the Tridentine Mass. A lot like that.
So you're saying in real life perhaps it's going to transition into the... Yeah, that's...
I think so. Because, again, remove for a minute an elderly leadership who will punish you if you remind them of the bad old times that they escaped, little hands flailing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, pretend that they don't exist. All right. Every Novus Ordo saying young priest I know who has said it eastward facing has gone on about the benefits, has been amazed, didn't understand it could be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Every priest I know in a parish with 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 nationalities thinks, what can I do to where we can all just have one midnight mass at Christmas and one vigil mass at Easter?
Yeah.
I mean, some of these are the result of faith. Some of them are purely, what's the word I want? Pragmatic.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember that the way we had things arose in response to human need.
Right.
They will return because they are connected to human nature and a human supernature. The problem is that the people that try to reinvent the faith did so out of their own little imaginings or their own little brains that were culturally, part of that little period in which they lived back then. But as I've said many times before, you fight reality, reality will always win. A good example of this, by way of a parable, you might say, I don't want to say where it was, but it was Assumption Abbey in North Dakota. And when the conciliar changes were brought into the Mass, the abbot of the time, well, he was very advanced, and all this, his little hands flailing. And he said, I know, we'll get rid of that nasty old bit of cardboard we used to put on top of the chalice.
I know, yeah, okay.
Well, he did that. And after 2 or 3 mouthfuls of flies, he went back to the old system. Now, the brother who told me this, I said, if I'd been you, brother, I would have said, oh, no, my Lord Abbot, no! You are so smart and right, you just keep swallowing them flies. But I'm afraid that cathartic as that would have been for me, it would have been terrible for his career. And that's the thing, you see, ladies and gentlemen. These people are still living in a world of their own, as the Seekers tell us we all should do.
There's a lot of people living in a world of their own right now, I can tell you that.
Gosh. Well, our New Age friends like to say, create your own reality. I don't mind that so much. It's when people start creating mine, I get annoyed.
I love that. Yep.
It kind of pisses me off, really.
Yeah.
But, so are we out of questions?
We're done. Any final words?
Yeah, I do have final words. Guess what, gang? We're entering Advent. Now, there's a couple of things you want to bear in mind. You're going to be seeing me just after the last Sunday of the year, Christ the King. So that is the new calendar, which I'll be celebrating just because I can't get enough of it. So as I've told you earlier, I do it both Sundays, the old and the new.
Nice.
I love the feast. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, so bear a couple of things in mind. One is we're coming into Advent, so see what you can do to make your Advent a bit like Lent. You know, because that's what it was intended to do.
Yeah.
Our Eastern friends, both Catholic and Orthodox, this period is what they call the Nativity Fast, and they keep it the way they keep Lent.
Right.
So we should try, outside of the Sundays of Advent, and certain predetermined feast days, try to keep it like a little Lent. Christmas will mean a lot more for you if you don't start Christmasing until Christmas Eve.
Absolutely. That's another intuitive thing.
Yeah.
About the faith, you appreciate. So you can't wait till Christmas Day, the feast.
Yeah.
Oh.
And of course, your people, the Italians, when you
we
guys
do the fish on Christmas Eve.
Right, because see, Christmas Eve being a fast and abstinence day of the traditional calendar.
Yeah.
People had to eat non-meat.
Yeah.
Well, the Italians, of course, they'll do anything to make it decent. Whether or not this is in keeping with the spirit of the thing, I don't know.
Hey. Watch yourself.
I know. Until you've had your Neapolitan 7-fish meal on Christmas Eve, you haven't lived. So just keep that in mind. And then, of course, the actual Christmas dinner on Christmas Day. Heavens. That's one thing to keep in mind. But before we actually get underway with Advent, and remember that there are feasts. December 6th, St. Nicholas Day. December the 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, our patroness of these United States. You've got on the 13th, St. Lucy. You've got, was it the 16th, the Son of Guadalupe? Or is she the 12th? Anyway, the point is we have a number of feasts coming up. We'll be able to break your fast. So just, don't spaz out. But before all of that, you ready?
Yes.
November 30th.
November 30th.
St. Andrew's Day.
Ah, there we go.
The patron of the Scots. So my advice to you, ladies and gentlemen, if you can do something Scottish for St. Andrew's Day, the way you would Irish for St. Patrick's Day, or French-Canadian for St. Jean-Baptiste, what? Anyway, people do that, So, yeah, they wave the lily flag, and they eat poutine, and
oh, I love poutine.
they drink bagos. And,
oh, that's the good stuff right there.
You bet. Isn't it like that in your neighborhood, ladies and gentlemen? All the French-Canadians are out there. All the once a year French-Canadian. Anyway, stop. St. Andrew's Day. Whatever bit of Scot you've got in you, even if you don't have any, let it out. I myself have Scottish blood. I'm very proud of it. Scots were here with Wallace bled. The old alliance between Scotland and France. All that stuff. So, anyway, think of that. Think of Mary Queen of Scots and the devout but doomed House of Stuart. Think of all that stuff. And we will see you, I guess, in the depths of Advent next.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
gosh, yeah. Maybe you'll wear purple.
Yeah, I need to get myself a purple shirt.
Yeah, I could do it. I just wear white, ladies and gentlemen, because, we say how everyone is formed. I'm a relic of the time I was formed in. Sorry.
Okay, so that's it for this episode. We'll see you next time. And remember, if it's Monday, it's off the menu.
Take care.